I learned about the trigger finger correctly when I worked with Ben Doyle back in the late 80s, early 90s. Beautiful human being, wonderful, sweet gentleman, great instructor. Now, if you're lucky enough to have worked with Ben Doyle, you recognize this book, and Ben would make you read it in a certain sequence. And if you worked with Ben, you have this book, and it's probably laced with tears and frustration, just like my book is. But just kidding, but a beautiful human being, great instructor, and also a golfer that understood trigger finger is Greg Norman. Greg Norman came out with this device called The Secret. And if you're into golf or old enough, you remember this device. There are some drawbacks with this device. I'm not going to go into them now, but Greg Norman understood that one of the worst things that you can do is push through impact. And so that's why he invented this. So trigger finger. It's the index finger of your trail hand. And think of it this way, when you shoot a gun, do you push a trigger or do you pull a trigger? Now, I know shooting enthusiasts, you squeeze a trigger, but for the most part, you pull a trigger. And that's what what you're supposed to do with this index finger of your trail hand is that you're supposed to pull this index finger back. You're supposed to pull the trigger as you're moving through impact. Now, Ben would explain it that you wanted to feel this club shaft stay pressure against this index finger as you move through, so that way you could feel this dragging the club head through impact, so that way your hands would lead and drag the club head through impact. But what you really want to do is, with your right hand, I'm not a big fan of the trigger finger because most everybody that has an index finger down the club ends up flipping and using the trigger finger incorrectly. The foundation for the rest of the swing is using the wrist correctly through impact, is getting this left wrist to curl or flex through impact as the right wrist goes into extension or bends back, and that right index finger is pulling back as the hands are moving through impact. Now, there's a few other things that we need to understand. The wrist can do four things. They can flex, extend, ulnar deviate, radial deviate. The forearms can also pronate and supinate. Hogan used the term supinate. He said he wanted his left wrist to go into supination through impact. Supination is not a term designed for your wrist. It's actually designed for your forearm. So God love Ben Hogan, but he was using the wrong term. What you want to do is you want to have your left wrist curl as your left thumb stays pushed back and close the club face, and do the same thing but the opposite with your right hand. So you're closing this club face as your hands are leading the club head through impact. So you actually want to feel this right wrist and this right index finger bend back, and you want to pull the right index finger back, so that way you're closing the club face as your hands are leading the club head through impact. That's the foundation for the entire swing, is that your hands are leading the club head through impact as your wrists are closing this club face correctly through impact. So if you want to learn how it all fits together, click the link below, book a lesson, or we'll work together. You don't even have to come out. We can work together online. But you want to learn how to use these wrists correctly because that's the foundation for the rest of the swing.